not everyone could. All right, so the recording has started. So good afternoon. I think now to everyone it is noon PST. My name is Bart Scruper. I'm one of the co-founders of Mobile Pathways. And thank you to everyone here for what you're doing to support vaccine equity. I'm going to share my screen. We do have a really packed agenda. Here we go. Posey, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to go into the background of the Vaccine Equity Coalition, a group of immigration-based nonprofits, why we're all here, the big win we got from Twilio, and how we're going to get funding to ramp up your efforts, the reporting that they're requiring us, and we should be holding ourselves accountable to showing impact, and then opening up for Q&A. So why are we here? This sequel kind of sucks. I'm a data nerd. I consistently have been looking. I've always tracked the UK because the UK is like us in the future. And what I've seen with the Delta variant in the UK and what we're seeing here, and with the way our vaccinations are, we're at like 55% to vaccinations. UK, 65%. They're actually ahead of us. And look at what's happening there. And so this coalition and what we're doing for vaccine efforts could not have come at a better time. And I know, the road ahead isn't going to be easy and dire. So let's start with at least one success story and one of the first vaccine efforts that we'll be doing. So Lorena, if you could just speak about your efforts starting today. I believe this is tomorrow, correct?
Yes, our event is at Saturday from 10 to 1 p.m. Hi, everybody. Thank you all for having me. My name is Lorena Tully-Romain, co-founder of IMSchools. We provide professional development and support to families in order to ensure that immigrant students, especially those that are undocumented, can succeed in our K through 12. And just to begin, a little bit of context of the event. This is the second year we're doing it. And the nuance, especially around the vaccination, is to include and be a vaccination site. So thankfully, we had tons of support locally to be able to provide students with backpacks and supplies, shoes for the back to school, food baskets for their parents. And in addition to that, we'll be able to provide a vaccine thanks to you all support as well. And so we're really excited. We had over 500 students register. And we were only able to serve 200. And so all of them will be able to come in and receive all those services and get for the kids even the gift card for just getting the vaccination. So we're really excited and thankful for all the partners that have been involved and for us being able to provide the families. And we're using a lot of our trust, build the relationship that we have built for the last 2-3 years with these families. To ensure that they are feeling safe when it comes to the vaccination, because unfortunately our immigrant community has shared that they have received a lot of misinformation over the time of since we've been in this pandemic. So we have really utilized and leveraged our trust that we have built to ensure that families feel really comfortable coming in, getting the vaccination, and we'll be doing the Pfizer. So they will have another opportunity to come back for the second dose, and we wanted to make sure we continue to do some of that to drive up our vaccination rate for especially the 12-year-olds and up there are able to get vaccinated. And our events will be Saturday. We're excited. We'll share some pictures once that event happens as well.
Thank you. And we didn't practice this, by the way, to everyone on the group. They let us know about this 2 days ago, but you couldn't have teed this up better because for Melody, who's our impact director here at Mobile Pathways, and me, who wrote the grant, for Twilio and then PagerDuty, and we'll talk about more opportunities. The number one thing we wrote was trust. When they said, why you? We said, these organizations, they're embedded immigration-based coalitions, community-based organizations. They have the trust, and misinformation, which is rife, and difficulty of access because you can't afford the gas to get to the vaccination site. They trust these organizations. There's lots of reasons of a grant this size that you may win, but I have to think that trust is the number one factor. Broad picture and some actions we need you to take now, actually, if you could. So Francisco, if you can put that link in. So we received from nearly everyone on this call budgets, outreach methods, which we then wrote into the grant and summarized at a high level. If you can, this was sent my email and I'll send it again, but if you can just do it now, it'll take less than 2 minutes. If you click on the chat, you'll go to this sheet, which is public. Just make sure your outreach methods are correct. And I really love these additional others. The radio station was cool. And then please put in who your primary points of contact, up to 3. If you only have 1, that's fine too. Just the emails, who will be, needs to stay informed about, updates, if we get additional funding, coming to these meetings, which we will continue so we can share success stories, what things are failing, what things are working. So please just fill that out. It should just take a minute. And again, I'll send that afterwards. This is the entire coalition. It has grown since we first applied, whether coast to coast, and thanks to our partners at Freedom for Immigrants too. It's also now available in ICE detention centers. We realized the coalition, and this is going to be important when we get to the reporting aspect, there are so many different tools that we can use to reach vulnerable populations. And we are immigrant-based organizations. We also realize there are people that are going to be attending that aren't immigrants to these pop-up centers, and that's fine. Of course, anyone, the vaccine's not checking your passport or ID, it's just infecting. But there is so many different ways that were lots of people, and it was one of the difficulties of making these decisions about funding and reporting. So on that note, we did form a steering committee. We looked at the organizations that had the highest reach, the most number of methods. These are the organizations we met earlier this week after we received the funding and the reporting requirements from Twilio, and also about growing and expanding the coalition. We didn't want to make ivory tower decisions. So thank you to all these organizations and their thoughts, minds, and how they're reaching out, because it helped us make the decisions. So here is what we know. So Twilio awarded us the grant. Well, we can't go public about it till October 20th. They'd like to announce it at their company-wide conference. I think in like little things like, in schools, they had it on their banner, and I think that will look great. But if it's like as controlled as possible, we can't go on social media. We can't announce it. If you're individually fundraising, and I know other people are part of other coalitions that have raised funds for vaccine efforts, yes, you can mention that twilio.org is a funder. We're going to continue to do that. Just it is confidential, so use your best judgment. Absolutely no social media, newsletter blasts, little things like a back to school drive, and you have a logo there. Sure. The funding, it's coming in 2 parts. Immediately, which is next week, and then in 6 months later. So we do have to report on impact. And I will say, and we've worked with Twilio because, as many of you know, we provide the ability for nonprofits that are focused on immigrants to text for free via WhatsApp or SMS. I'm going to go back real quick because I did forget one thing. The bulk texting. So obviously, many of you bulk text via mobile pathways. If there are partners here that are new, or we work with you at SURF and you'd like to switch over, our texting services are free. Again, it's SMS and WhatsApp. And then as part of this coalition, which will be new, and a few of you are taking part tomorrow, it's Friday, right? Tomorrow, on a WhatsApp chatbot. WhatsApp is difficult to send bulk text. If you're sending thousands of messages, WhatsApp pulls it. So we'll also have a designed WhatsApp chatbot in multiple languages, and thank you to the participants that are taking part to make sure it's effective. Just wanted to call out that aspect as well. So back to the funding. To unlock the additional funds, the second half, we have to demonstrate impact, which for anyone that's been in the nonprofit fundraising world, that should not be surprising. And we'll talk about that. It's light. We make it as as light as possible. It's essentially on reach, how many people we've informed, and then especially for those of you working with clinics or even pop-up sites like the back to school, how many people were vaccinated. At the same time, we were raising funds with Twilio. PagerDuty was announced. PagerDuty, similar tech company, also decided to do a funding round. It was a 24-hour cluster of Hail Mary effort. We were left off the actual list. Twilio did not pass on our application as we expected. And we were mad for Twilio for about a hot second, and they found out, they're like, okay, we're no longer mad at you. we had to really pull some strings. We had 24 hours. We didn't get the full funding that we requested. We could only fund a few partners out of it just because of the timelines. It went to the ones with the highest reach and vaccination efforts. So again, anyone that submitted a Twilio budget, you will get your budget in full. I think everyone about additional funding from PagerDuty has been informed of that. As for everyone, more funding should be underway. We have identified 11 more leads, which we're actually reviewing immediately after this call internally, our own fundraising team, myself and Melody. So more funding hopefully will be underway for everyone. So those are the two grants. But we'll focus really on Twilio because we haven't even met with PagerDuty. We expect that everything we're going to show you now, because we know, vaccination efforts are underway. As ImSchool said, Saturday, Thai CDC has been holding weekly clinics. Here's what we know from Twilio in terms of reporting impact and what we'd like from this group. We continue these calls. We'll keep them informative, we'll keep them brief, but we'll make sure it's valuable. So we can share success stories, we can learn from each other, have guest speakers that are very well informed about vaccination efforts on a national or local level. It could be anyone from your organization just to listen in. They will be recorded and shared. Weekly reporting on reach and vaccination. We kept ourselves to a goal of something that you can do in 5 minutes or less. Log into MyCamino, enter in how many people were reached and vaccinated, or a link. We haven't figured that part out yet, but essentially the weekly reporting would be 5 minutes or less. How many people did you reach? How? Was it text? Was it social media? Very, very brief. And then quarterly reporting. Again, the quarterly reporting will be important because the second half of the funding will come in 6 months' time. A brief impact story. It could be, we'll create a template for it. Shouldn't be too onerous at all, like 30, 50 words. Could be like ImSchool saying, we held this back to school drive, 200 students showed up. Here is Marissa. She was very excited about her gift card. She got vaccinated. Things of that sort, because stories matter, right? Stories help determine and motivate people to do things and inspire them. The numbers and the weekly reporting, the quarterly reporting on impact with the stories. And then for certain partners, and we'll move on to this later, and this will happen in the coming weeks, especially the partners are already texting with us. We are developing a survey to understand why people may be hesitant of getting the vaccinations, and working with partners already doing this, because we already know many of you are and have this information. So this is very TBD. It won't be for everyone, obviously, because of the different outreach efforts. Calling out, our partners, Freedom for Immigrants, still have a hotline in ICE, so people can get informed in detention centers about how to get vaccinated or their vaccine rights, but obviously can't do a text survey to inmates. So we realize that not all partners can participate in this part. And then if you have any questions about this, the next 2 weeks will be your time. You can find the time to chat with me. Obviously, you all have my emails. We'll figure out one-on-one how to make it best work. Finally, the grant agreement, and then we'll open up the floor to Q&A. So it'll be very simple. It'll be one page. It'll be just exactly what we showed there. You're going to show up to the monthly meetings or have a volunteer. And to be honest, volunteers or frontline people may be the best people to attend, because they're going to be the ones knowing what's working, what's not. Weekly reporting, and then quarterly, and then just ACH information so we can process the funding. If ACH is not possible, we can mail checks, obviously not preferred, but we can do it. And the funding will come through us. We will be the sole reporting partner to twilio.org and PagerDuty, and then hopefully more funders as well. So that was a lot of information, and I'm glad we have 10 minutes for questions, because I'm sure there are quite a few. Before we open it up, again, we have been working very quickly on this, because the funding process, like to actually apply, we did that very quick. And thank you guys again for how quickly you responded to my email. Like, I need your budget in 24 hours or less. Obviously, the decision-making process took longer than we expected. We were actually also surprised that we can't publicly talk about Twilio support until October. But we are making this up as quickly and yet mindfully as possible. And thank you again to the steering committee for helping with those decisions, because it wasn't easy to define all these. At that point, please, anyone, what questions would you have?
Hey Bart, I have a few questions. What is our time frame for the grant? Did that change at all?
Good question. It is a year. We expect this coalition to be around and the funding of it for a year. One caveat to that is we still haven't met with PagerDuty, but I have absolutely no reason to believe they won't be identical to Twilio. That being said, the grant agreement would be for a year, but we have to be mindful that we don't know where we're going as a society. The Delta variant, I heard Fauci's words yesterday. This is a, how did he put it? Not significantly different. I mean, we don't know where we're going, but for the grant agreement a year, overall, like with the way the variant, especially the Delta variant, which is so nefarious and is actually almost like a different virus altogether, and I was really scared of how Fauci phrased it, but let's say 1 year for this grant.
Got it, thank you.
Good question.
And as far as reporting, you want us to continue doing the way that we have been doing it on the mobile pathways platform?
I'll be supplying more details shortly.
Got it, thank you.
Thank you. There's a question.
And Bart, first round of funding will be dispersed next week, right?
We hope so. So
Okay.
Twilio is, you know, as most tech companies, they do work with usually donor advised funds, like either Tides or Impact Assets or similar. So they now pass our information to the donor advised fund. Most tech companies don't actually send you checks. So they have passed our information to their donor advised fund. They have our details. We are expecting the funding to hit our bank accounts, I'd say Tuesday or Wednesday. We are meeting with PagerDuty on Monday, again, with no expectation that anything will be different, because PagerDuty and Twilio know each other and have been aligned in their approach. So we're just going to make sure nothing's different with PagerDuty on Monday. We expect the funding to hit our accounts Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. We'd send out the grant agreements for a really quick e-signature Tuesday morning. We could probably start sending funds. My goal is to send funds on Thursday with all those things unknown. Or not unknown, but not yet defined. So that's the timeline that we're hoping to achieve. And so actually a good point on that, because I know one other thought, most organizations applied for like the total amount of funding because it was up to 25,000. Certain organizations went less because they didn't have the full amount of the program or were smaller. For the organizations that applied for the full amount of funding, that will be in two parts. There are certain organizations that are working with other foundations that are essentially quite small. And it'll be my task to figure out, like, I think they'll get the funding up front because there are some smaller CBOs that applied for $1,200 or $5,000. This becomes too difficult to split up. But for the larger sums of funding, especially when you're looking at 10,000 or above, as some of the members of the coalition are looking at, that will be over two parts.
Lisa is asking whether we can share the slides.
Yes, this slide and the recording will be shared after this, along with the link to the methods and the primary points of contact. So again, if you haven't had a chance, Francisco shared that in the chat. Please do enter any X's or any cool ways that you may be outreaching and your points of contact.
And this recording will be available on our channel, right? Our YouTube channel, Bart?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so everyone knows. Okay. Let's see here.
And Bart, this might be later once the announcement goes out in October, but I mean, I am really inspired, and I love all these organizations coming together for these, like, for this purpose of helping our immigrant community. So I'm wondering if there's any sort of like communications plan, something to kind of get, you know, the word out there that we not just got this grant, but all of these organizations are working on this.
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, PagerDuty went public, and actually I'll include the link if Francisco's keep me is. I'll have you guys review my email. I'll include the PagerDuty blog post because we can go public about that. So that's the good news, right? Like essentially, they're not as all funding helps. They're not as they didn't fund us as high as Twilio, but let's use that to promote this coalition. Second, the Twilio funding also comes with volunteer time. So we met with their volunteer manager and said, you know, where's the greatest help? We said marketing. We'd like to have a press release about this coalition. We'd like to have a one-pager created to promote. And when it makes sense, and anybody who wants to participate also that's hearing this, you know, like I'd love to include a quote or use it for my own fundraising, please do let me know so we can continue promoting it. So that is part of it. So we can definitely use PagerDuty to already start promoting it. A couple of other thoughts that are going to start coming out in these monthly meetings. Many of you are doing videos, which is great because they're obviously, you know, some organizations are focused on our Thai community members, some Korean, some Latinx, some LGBTQ, and that all makes sense that we're doing different videos, but we should also have some general videos. So for general purposes. So in these coming months, we'll talk about that and coming up with like a coalition video that's representing all or the organizations, especially as we start learning as time goes by, why people are still hesitant about the vaccine. And I think that would be a very good conjoint marketing effort and promotion effort. Great question, because there is a lot. I think that's inspiring. Any other questions? Because I have one. I could actually go into a quick history of this coalition based on that question, but I'll hold if there are other questions.
I'll just quickly unmute to say that if you are not on My Camino already, please say something, and we'll get you signed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there were a few partners that are new to the coalition that aren't on My Camino, and I have those marked as well. But if you could put that in the sheet as well, I know up to LA will have it soon. And let me use that as a quick 60 seconds on the history of this coalition, how it came to be. As many of you know, we worked in the California Immigrant Resilience Fund, the cash distributions to undocumented immigrants because they weren't part of the CARES package. The person leading that, Darren Petsod, former president of GSER, now working at the Tides Foundation, about 4 months ago discovered, and we knew it too because we were quite with Twilio, that grant opportunity. She reached out to all CERT partners saying we should apply, reached out to me separately saying perhaps, you know, Mobile Pathways can form a coalition. We started with like 5 or 10 organizations. As we started to apply, it snowballed as more and more organizations that we worked with. Sometimes we also work with organizations or, you know, just we keep tabs together like ASAP, who had 120,000 asylum seekers that they regularly communicate with. So the coalition started to grow from there, and that's where we are today. I'd say most people here have worked with Mobile Path. Almost everyone has. And there's no one here that's kind of like, I'd say, new. But that's the reason also and this coalition, everyone here is immigrant focused. Not all our partners in My Camino in the regards of using the free texting capabilities or for more legal organizations that use our immigrant hearings and tracking and making sure no one misses their court dates and they're well prepared for their days in court. Any other thoughts or questions? I'm not looking at chat, Posey or Francisco, if you see anything else in the chat.
Yeah, I'm checking the chat as we go.
And from my perspective, I know not everybody uses text. We've been using text and WhatsApp to outreach. So if you have ideas on how to reach your constituents and you want our input or want to use our platform, please reach out.
Thank you to everyone for everything you're doing, because we need to meet the moment again. We were asked to meet the moment last year. Obviously, we've hit blocks that, to be honest, I'm not fully surprised. When you come from Poland, you're born with a healthy dose of cynicism. It's one of the cultural traits of our people, and but it gives light and hope for every effort that you're doing, whether it's back to school drives, driving out to people, having clinics in South Dakota, New York, Dallas, California. Thank you for everything that you're doing. We look forward to supporting more. Be well, strong. The road ahead, it's not going to be easy, but we have each other to rely on. Thank you, everybody.